let's get this train wreck going. Welcome to May's edition of the Patch News Support Group, a safe place to talk about patching and all the harm it does to our lives. My name is Bryan.
To our lives in the same sentence, sir?
Yes, yes. My name is Bryan Dam. I'm a patch. My official title here is Patch Lover Extraordinaire at Patch My PC. I am, as always, joined by my coworkers Jordan Benzing and Jake Shackelford. And we are joined this month, by Gerry Hampson, one of my favorite curmudgeons in the entire world. And he is going to hopefully crap all over us while we do our thing. And then he's going to talk a little bit about how you manage, I think, bring your own devices or just the proverbial unmanageable things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thanks for inviting me. You didn't tell me it was going to be a train wreck though when you invited me.
Oh,
so.
yes. Sorry. Well, I mean,
you just landed that one on me just now.
Yes. Sorry, Gerry. Gerry, this is it's going to be a train wreck. It's kind of what we do here. So as always, Jordan's going to lead us off. He's going to talk about some of the more interesting vulnerabilities that have been released in the last month. I have a huge list of news that I will try and talk fast through, and then we'll hand it over to Gerry. So, God damn it, Gerry, one of these days I'll get it right, but probably never. Sorry.
As you just said it wrong twice in a row.
I know. That's what I said.
It's really not difficult.
The American mind cannot comprehend. That's the problem. That's the problem. All right, Jordan.
All right, let's go ahead and jump right on into talking about some of the wonderful joys of the Microsoft updates. So in this particular month of May, we had 67 unique CVEs that Microsoft was looking to address. Of those particular CVEs, in the bucket here, we had one that was classified as critical, 59 get classified as important, 1 moderate, 1 low, and 5 with a, you should probably do something about it at some point for it. In terms of the breakdown of the different types of CVEs, 3 of those were classified as denial of service. A lot of that is pointing at you, Visual Studio. We had 17 that were elevation of privilege ones, 7 information disclosure ones, 27 remote code executions, 2 security feature bypasses, 5 spoofings, and 1 tampering joy. The other thing...
Can I just say, Jordan, right?
Absolutely.
First of all, I love these webinars that you guys do, because I have no time to look at this stuff every month and to understand and to dive deep into what's there. But you guys kind of decipher all this for I just think it's very useful. So thank you.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. And speaking of diving deep into these, the two
things, Gerry. The trick is not to feed Jordan. Okay. I mean, he has this tinkling
especially after
going
midnight.
on where he's like,
I was talking to everybody.
But Jordan. Yeah,
and
exactly.
One thing we forgot to mention, Teams does have a Q&A. So if you have a very specific question you absolutely want an answer for, go down. I had to hit other or more, but if you ask that question, we will make sure it gets answered.
And to add on to that, Brian, there is also a resources button that you'll want to hit to see all the different links and everything that we're going to be talking about through the rest of the webinar as well.
Right. But, chat is there for the shit posting as usual. Sorry. Go on, Jordan. And thank you, Gerry.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
So in terms of things that are particularly worth of note this month, before we jump into the thing that everybody wants to talk about, is CVE-2024-30040. Again, that is CVE-2024-30040. The reason why this one is kind of fun and, shall we say, exciting, is basically this is yet again another like, hey, send us emails and we'll just be able to give away keys to the kingdom as a result of it. And this is a unauthenticated attacker can basically try to exploit this vulnerability. So this is somebody outside your network that could try to take care of this. This is just somebody basically sending this can cause code execution to get run on machines. What this effectively is an OLE bypass for it. And the OL lets you get around a lot of the Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Office controls effectively that prevent things from trying to load. Yep, OLE bypass. You got it. This is basically applicable in a ton of the different components of operating systems that are out there today. And it is currently being actively exploited in the wild. So Microsoft has this one ranked up pretty high just because of the fact that it has active exploitation currently. So you'll want to start working to address that. This is part of the Core OS patches for the month in general. So just something to be conscious of. The second one from the bucket of Microsoft ones that I want to look at in terms of core patches is CVE 2024-30051. And that's CVE 2024-30051. Basically what this one is a case of, so you think you control your servers? No. There is functional exploit code for this vulnerability. Again, it is actively being exploited in the wild. Microsoft has marked this one as slightly below critical, more of a important one of it, just because of the fact that somebody needs to be on the box first in some way, shape, or form. And then is leveraged as a way to exploit the system to go from a regular user to be able to get to system context for it. These links, by the way, that James Watchley has posted here are also included or should be included in the resources section, I believe, as well for people. Okay, in terms of Microsoft patches, there's one other Microsoft patch, but it also happens to land in the bucket kind of like the weird Edge land / Chrome land that everybody wants to talk about. So we'll come back to that one here in a second. So let's jump into third-party updates this particular month. So in this last month, Patch My PC has tossed out 2,776 updates. I do believe that is actually a record now. So we have had 2,776 third-party updates that we have tossed out there this month. Of those particular updates that we tossed out, there were 110 critical updates. 2,050.
There was a great comment there from Jim Pogue. 2,775 were Firefox.
Well, 288 actually, but yes, there were quite a few Firefox updates this month.
Yeah.
2,052 were marked as moderate, 9 were low, and 597 didn't have a serious categorization of it along the way. And now we get into the fun part that everybody wanted to talk about. Let's talk about browser wars this month. So as is tradition, let's walk through how many patches there were for our browsers first, and then jump into the 2 CVEs specifically that everybody wants to talk about. The first one here, Google Chrome, there were 26 different unique patches for the types of Google Chrome, 288 Firefoxes, hashtag languages are hard, 20 Edge patches, and 10 Opera patches. So now for the really confusing part here, and if you want to push my screen share up, now is the moment, gentlemen here. The first one here is CVE 2024-4761. This is the one that everybody probably super duper cares about. And by 4761, I also mean 4671, because that wasn't confusing at all. 4761 first deals with a issue inside of the Chrome components for the HTML page inside of Chromium specifically. The reason why I wanted to share this kind of screenshot here is that I want to make super clear it's not just Chrome, it's the Chromium engine component. So this can also include things like Vivaldi, as well as the Microsoft Edge browser. So it's anything that uses the Chromium engine component of it. So we had this.
That'd be like WebView 2, right?
Yeah, kind of, sort of, basically. More or less the same thing, except for other browsers or other components. But yes.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, like, you know, if we have any config manager people here, like that's part of the that's part of the console. Like,
yep.
Oh man.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Totally. So these updates basically are like, if you go browse to an HTML web page, both of these have to deal with mitigations inside of it in terms of, like, if you browse to a web page that happens to have bad stuff on it, you're gonna have a bad time. The big message this month is actually, surprisingly enough, for the first time in a while, not go patch and deal with Exchange servers. I mean, you should just get rid of the Exchange servers at this point, but it's actually like go patch your browsers as opposed to dealing with Office things. This month, the big focus this month in general is go patch all of your browsers as fast as you can, and go patch anything as well, not just your browsers, but anything as well that might use Chromium. So for example, something like Vivaldi as well. And so the better you can correlate together what products are using those back-end components will help out with that in the future. Over to you, Mr. Bryan.
That was it. Okay.
That was it.
All
That
right.
was it in turn. Well, that was it for the specific ones that I want to really focus in on. This one kind of sucks just in general, as you're about to cover. And I know you've got a lot of news that's related to some of the things that I wanted to talk about. So I said, meh.
We'll see. We'll
just
see.
let
We'll see.
Bryan talk
I'm
about it.
gonna
We'll see what it
interrupt
is.
because that's what I do
Okay.
best. And there is a
Yeah.
chat in the or a question and answer in the Q&A, Jordan. Do you have
Okay.
know anything about the curl vulnerability? And
Let me
any
go
like
and pull
information on that?
vulnerability. Let me
Yeah,
go. I have, Bryan, you go ahead and we'll come back to this. So the short answer to it is yes. The longer answer though is I think Bryan may have had a news article about this already.
Yeah, I think
for it.
I think we briefly talked about it last month because so for those that are aware.
Oh, this is the one from March, and then it got re-updated. Yeah. This is the one that got re-updated. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, curl has had a vulnerability for a while. Actually, I think it
Yeah.
predates that.
Yep.
Predates March, but
it was, I think, December of last year, I think, was when the curl vulnerability first came out. It was either December or November of last
Right.
year when the curl vulnerability
Right.
first came out for it.
But a
and
while
then they re-updated it for it.
well, and so my memory might be wrong on here, but I'm going to try anyways. Which is the vulnerability like was from earlier this year or very late last year, and curl, which is an open source project that has nothing to do with Microsoft, let alone Windows. They fixed it, but there's a version of curl that's built into Windows, the OS. So Microsoft itself packages, compiles curl or takes the binary and shoves it into Windows, the operating system delivers it to you. So and that took Microsoft a hot second to get their head around. And so some people kind of freaked out because you have some third-party vulnerability tools, maybe even Defender itself, that says, hey, you have it detects that you have this vulnerable version of curl assembly on your machine, and it starts bitching at you about it. And so what some people did was, okay, you could make that complaint from your security product go away by replacing the DLL yourself. But you are effectively replacing a Windows system, system file.
Yeah.
I mean, effectively.
Yeah.
And it's not the same bits, right? Like Microsoft is compiling it for themselves. Part of it, they're doing the testing. So like people did that because
they also just deleted it as well.
Okay, yeah, you could do that too.
There's a whole set of problems with PowerShell for that too.
Right. If you did any of those things, you may have had difficulty applying the last round of updates. If you did any of those things, you may have created a problem for yourself. Microsoft has finally, took them months, too long, arguably, to get that fix into a cumulative update. But if you did it on the other things, you may have just screwed yourself. And for that, I'm sorry for you. But that's what I remember of that one. If you want to go and look and see if there's anything new, Jordan, and then pipe in. But that's what I'm aware of. So with that, let's go ahead.
Wait, there was one other question about like how often to patch Chrome that came up here in the chat real quick too. And the answer to that question is you should patch it as much as you possibly can, as quickly as you possibly can, basically. Especially if you're not doing anything weird with browsers, right? Like the only reason to like not patch browsers is and even this is a debatable reason, right? The only reason to not patch them as quickly as you possibly can maybe is if you have like some weird super business critical in-house custom extension for your mortgage department because you're a bank or something like that that's super like mission critical, blah blah blah.
Well, it
otherwise,
wasn't
like,
even
you should just patch them all the time, turn it up to the maximum. You can either use auto update. I mean, clearly making patches with something like, the Patch My PC product or something like that is going to be super efficient for time, and also from a reporting perspective, in terms of like being able to make sure that it's patched. The self
otherwise it's very, very painful to keep up to date Chrome in particular. Is it really?
It wasn't just a how often either. It was like how should you? And I think as many possible ways as you can get out there, the better. So if you have our product, do that. Also auto update, things like that as well.
And I'm also going to add in again, the other big thing to keep in mind is keep in mind that specifically for this patch, it is not really Chrome that you're thinking about patching. People think about Chrome as the thing that they're patching because that's what everybody talks about when it comes to Google and the browser wars. It is Chromium specifically for these vulnerabilities. In every single product where the Chromium feature, or there is a build of Chromium, much like the curl build issue with Microsoft here, right? Like anywhere that Chromium build exists within one of those products is a self-contained component. Edge, Chrome, etc. This vulnerability exists.
Guys, there's a question there. How do you get your sysadmin team to deploy these patches as quickly as you guys are recommending? The bad guy does not take any time off, do they?
Nope.
Yep. So auto updating is going to be a good one. Chrome itself has like a management platform that you can enroll in that will let you push out updates as well. Otherwise, if you're using our product, you can do things like an automatic deployment rule, or you can push out the update through Intune. Generally, I suggest syncing daily to pull in, the latest stuff from us. And you can set
twice
up
daily now. Actually, we actually release
there you
catalog updates most of the time twice a day now.
And you
Because
can set up a specific ADR like for the browsers if you really wanted to like force those to go out much more frequently than say like your normal patch Tuesday cycle or however often you're pushing stuff out. But usually a combination of auto update, our product, and maybe even the management platform that Google offers specifically for their browsers as well.
Yeah.
But I do love all in the chat, buy patch my PC. It's a good recommendation.
And as far as like how do you convince people, right? There's a really convincing argument here, especially from a business perspective. There is a couple of like IBM does a really good one every year, and there's a couple other companies out there that do some really good like what's the cost of a security breach type of thing, and what's the leading cause of security breaches type of thing. And basically the leading cause, which you find out at the end of the day, is unpatched software on machines at the end of the day. And it depends on what you want to define as a patch, right? Like, patching is more than just like patching to the OS. Everything you do from the moment the machine comes out of the box is technically a patch, right? Applying configs is a patch in the technical definition of the term. You are changing a config from the existing state of it. You are from that perspective. And so unpatched machines at the end of the day are the ultimate cost of, or the ultimate root cause for many of these things. And the cost of these is in millions.
Yeah, we've helped a lot of customers to recover, and as you say, there's a dollar cost, of course, but you can't put a cost on the reputational damage.
Yep.
It only takes one. The short answer to that question is like for Chrome, if you don't have any control over a third party and you're doing it by hand, I agree with Jake. Just enable the auto updater and let it go burr. Complete lack of control. You have no control, but that's probably at this point better than that just not doing it. And if you have our product, you can absolutely automate that really, really quickly. I mean, we have a crack team that makes sure Chrome stays updated. So sync at least once a day, twice a day if you want, and you can absolutely automate getting the latest version out there. Okay, so I had this up here because I don't think I had it in the resources because I hadn't actually picked up on this one yet. But yes, here's a nice little. Someone go ahead and I'll throw this in chat just for giggles because I don't think I put it in my preemptive list. But yes, there was a couple 0 days you should be worried about. But moving along, after patches from last month, there were 2 issues that Microsoft went out and released. And sorry, they put these in the stupid M365 admin center, so it's not like you can't actually get to this page unless you are the right kind of admin. I'm sorry, but it's where they put it in there. But basically, they kind of broke 2 things. They broke NTML traffic, which would break a bunch of VPNs. And then that would kind of the corollary. I think there certain VPN connections would fail. So those with last month's update. Both of these have been updated to be resolved by this latest group of patches, so we should be okay on that front. But if you were hit by those, go ahead and know that they should, in theory, be resolved. We get into some fun things that happened this month. If you are using Delinea server, or I think that is Psychotic, there was a vulnerability that you should probably care about and go take a look. Yes. Sorry, it's Psychotic. What's the actual product name, Jordan? I'm blanking on this for some reason.
For Psychotic, it's Delinea, I think it is. I think it's Delinea Secret Server, right?
I know, but what was the previous name? Nobody calls it that.
But for Psychotic?
Yeah.
I don't know. Keep going. I'll look it up.
Okay. I thought it was called something. But anyways, big, huge off bypass. You definitely want to go take a look at that if you're using Psychotic product there. Oh, lovely. More ads. PuTTY had a issue. So if you're using PuTTY as your SSH client, there's a vulnerability there that came out this month. And again, I think this is one, I don't think, Microsoft doesn't have this built in, at least not that I'm aware of. But if you're using PuTTY, make sure you go ahead and grab the latest version of it because it was vulnerable.
PuTTY is
or
one of the
people
heavy
that-
hitters, isn't it? If you do a Nessus scan or something every month, PuTTY's
Yeah.
one that usually up there in the top 10, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's a very common system admin tool, right? You're going to have it
Yeah.
if you're, especially if you're doing any kind of, what's the right word? You're logging into any kind of Linux box and or, like a managed switch or something like that. You're probably going to have PuTTY out there on your network. So be aware, take a look for it. Go ahead and figure that out. UnitedHealthcare got hacked. Fun. What's
They're
funny
the only
about
healthcare
this?
company in the news in the past couple of weeks here too.
I know. I'm not sure I got them all, but the funny one about the reason I call out this one is because they had already paid one group, but then another group said, yeah, but we're the ones that really hacked you, and we want you to pay us too. Like, I mean, that's like, apparently, who among us could have predicted that there's no honor among thieves? And so they literally already paid the ransom, and then somebody's like, yeah, but we're the ones that really hacked you, and we want you to pay us too, which is just, you love to see it. Cisco
Yeah.
had some root escalation.
They had some small
flaws.
challenges this past month.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm not even going to cover them all. There's more than one. But if you have any Cisco gear, A, I'm sorry, but B, like, okay, you want to go do some research and know if you have some shite you need to update pretty damn quick, because there's a bunch of them. Did anybody use any of those things? Yes, they did. Yes, they absolutely did. So here's a nice little write-up on one of those. I don't think it was actually, I'm not sure it's the one that came up this month. But yeah, hey, look at that. Some government networks got hacked because Cisco firewalls do Cisco firewall things. So that's just a fun, hey, this is actually what happens when you don't do the thing. The other funny thing is that the FBI. So last month we talked about, let's talk about that in a hot second. But this kind of made some news, like our FBI director, Christopher Wray, was like, hey, yeah, we totally know that China is in U.S. infrastructure, which is just an interesting admission. Like, we all kind of knew it, but like, he said it, and so it kind of becomes this interesting article to read just for that, right? Like, there's a certain level of honesty you normally don't see, and there it is.
So we shouldn't be allowing or whitelisting TikTok now.
Well,
Mm.
I mean, I think we should just block TikTok on the premise of it being TikTok, not because of any national security concerns. I mean, honestly, the internet may have been a huge mistake, and we just, every month we come back and explain why the internet was a huge mistake, and we just should have never built it. But we're here.
Turns out there's a bunch of terrible people on the internet. This includes you and me.
Yes, including us. MITRE. Who is MITRE, Jordan? I tried to look this up, and I don't have a good summary. What is MITRE? And why would I care?
So those really cool like CVE numbers that you have this tendency to get given, when you have a vulnerability. Yeah, they're the company that like makes those.
The things you blather on about?
Yeah, they're the company that like makes those,
Okay.
Not to be confused with the SAW database. MITRE is the actual like organization at the end of the day that is responsible for helping to like build out and maintain the actual CVE list and database and everything like that. And they had a small, tiny problem based on a certain tool set that they happen to have in their environment that had a series of 0 days that we talked about. I think it was like 7 or something like that, 0 days in the span of like a month and a half, to the point where there were CISA things about like ripping out appliances. It turns out they had one of those appliances and had a small problem. Yeah.
So yeah, there you have it. That's fun. That's nice to see. An odd one here, just Windows Insider released a build where it's this first thing right here. You know how when you install Windows, especially the home versions, is trying to really get you set up a Microsoft account? They're going to start prompting you that apparently right in the start menu. So they're going to actually put like a little in the settings homepage, and they're going to try and convince you to set up a Microsoft account. And there's various posts around online of like how to create a local account and avoid the whole Microsoft Online thing, like literally unplugging the network cord when you get to the part of the out-of-box experience and all that jazz. But this made some brouhaha in terms of, oh yeah, they're going to start actually prompting you in the product itself if you only have a local account. They really want you to have a Microsoft account. So, I don't think this is going to impact enterprises all that much, but, for all of our parents and siblings and other loved ones that we are begrudgingly responsible for, just know that that's a thing that's going to happen. Microsoft also started doing, they kind of low-key rolled this thing out. And again, I don't think this is going to impact EDU and enterprises all that much, but they've started wrapping the store apps in a .NET wrapper, very specifically so that you can go to the store, apps.microsoft.com, and you can click install, and instead of installing the actual installer, they're actually going to install like a .NET wrapper around the installer, and that might throw some Defender and other things. Yes, Jordan, you have thoughts on this?
It's gonna be super awesome. It's gonna be super
Spicy.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's gonna be so good. Because like,
yeah,
everybody likes DLLs, right?
Right. Yeah, like exactly. They are putting, so it's like, so it's confusing some developers. Someone's like, wait a minute, why is there suddenly a, why is this a .NET 7 whatever when I'm a .NET 6.2 or it's like
Yep.
what the hell is that?
Brian, is this the
Yeah.
old store or the new store?
Is there a new store?
I know they don't like the phrase new store.
I
in
don't even know.
Microsoft.
It's the new store.
The new store.
Yeah.
It is apps Microsoft.com. So this isn't going to impact if you're using Intune to like deploy apps from the store into Intune. Like that this has nothing to do with this. This is merely if you went into app.microsoft.com in a browser and you click install, like it would take you to the store, blah, blah, blah. And they're putting a wrapper around here so you can get this experience that you see, which is like, oh, they're trying to like remove a click or two, right?
Yeah,
That's basically
I
what
put a
they're
link
trying
to it. They actually have like a little developer thing about it, like here where
Right.
you turn on this feature. I put in the link in the chat to like the Microsoft
Yeah.
Docs from it for it. Like it's like, hey, click on this thing to be able to enable this. The concern is that your downloads folder is a terribly disgusting, concerning place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody ever actually cleans out the downloads folder. The big concern here, right, is like you start adding more things and start adding things into the downloads folder. The store app doesn't put them in the downloads folder right now, but you start doing this and you start installing things directly out of it that you click on from clicking on the web, and you're going to end up with a bunch of stuff that's going to live in there that could accidentally reference things it shouldn't reference, basically, because of like how installers work.
Right. So here's the previous experience, right? You click install and be like, oh, do you want to open the Microsoft Store? And then it would open the Microsoft Store and you click install. And now it's just going to do kind of what you think it would do, which is, hey, we'll just, download the CXE. And to Jordan's point, maybe that's not ideal, but it's what people sort of have come to expect. So they did it. Anyways, they're trialing it, getting some negative feedback. If you see it happening, just be aware that's a thing. Moving along. I love it when they just do this. I'm only sending this one because some poor bastards had to like figure out how to patch Voyager 1 from hundreds of millions of miles or whatever it is. They actually, this is code written back in the 60s and 70s, and somebody had to figure out how to write a patch for it and send it to Voyager 1. So if you are just a huge patching nerd, you might just enjoy this from that perspective. If you're a space nerd, you might also enjoy it. But I wish I could say I had patched 70s era code millions of miles from Earth.
Patch my Voyager.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like we have a new feature request.
Yeah, this you want Voyager. This is how you get Voyager. We talked last month. Last month we had Robin mentioning with us, and he talked a bit about open source and some of the changes and challenges. And one of them we talked about there was HashiCorp, which is Teradata or Terraform, I think. And they made some interesting moves. Well, they ultimately got acquired by IBM for a record amount. So I guess that worked out for them. But this is just we're just basically tacking on to that conversation we had last month that, oh, okay, so now IBM owns that, and they will probably do IBM things. Another super fun, we talked earlier, I think, about this, but they also, UnitedHealth, earlier they said that they came out and they said, oh, like Citrix got hacked, and that's sort of true, but they didn't, Citrix didn't get hacked, sorry. UnitedHealthcare runs Citrix. somebody came in through their Citrix servers, but it's because they stole credentials and they didn't have MFA. So the story here is, the same story we've seen for years, which is use MFA, even on your Citrix servers, apparently. Who among us could have known this? This is super fun. If anybody is in Discord land, there was apparently a bot that was literally just set to join every single public Discord server it could and record and scrape and store every conversation that's was ever had. It could. And that apparently got shut down. But I mean, the fact that it existed is itself news. So it's called Spy Tech. You want to go look it up. Do you have any, as a admin of a well-used Discord server, do you have anything to add there, Jordan?
Yeah, so this was kind of, we actually tracked this for a pretty good while before it actually happened. They had some, let's just say that the creator and the runner of the website had some interesting comments in regards to GDPR and people's privacy on their website in general. Of the case of like, well, that's not how that works. In fact, that's not how that works at all. I'm glad that that's your opinion, but no, the government will get really mad about you once they get to this. So more or less, the big thing was that for a while there, what we and a lot of other admins were doing, there was a way that basically you could look at and you could basically figure out if one of the bots and get the ID of the bot being in your server, and then you could just ban it. The big reason why they were able to shut this down in terms of like the big distillation of this is that if you are developing code or anything like this, in the components of the terms of service for Discord, there is a section that basically says you aren't allowed to do what's called self-botting. And what this was doing was it was actually doing something called self-botting in order to do this. So what they were doing was they were creating an actual like Discord user, not an app or a bot of it. And they were turning that user account into a bot to basically just pull and transcribe the contents by scraping against the websites and the URLs for it in a form to then basically sell it to you for like $5 for it. From an OSINT perspective, this was kind of, the bot was basically Copilot, yes, kind of. And what was happening, what was kind of like the OSINT implications of this basically became that if you had a user ID, and if you don't know this, now you do, if you turn on developer tools inside of Discord, you could get and find what was called, what they call it the Snowflake ID basically for a user account for it. And that user ID would then be linkable across every single Discord that it was in. So you would be able to, if you could find the identity of somebody's Discord ID from it, you could then extrapolate every single conversation from every single persona that person had across all of the servers that bot was ever in terms of trying to correlate together to figure out information about people. So it was pretty not great.
And finding someone's Snowflake in Discord is as simple as a right click.
It's literally right click, copy ID. Yep.
Yeah.
For it. Yeah. So it's pretty bad.
No place in the enterprise, that's for sure.
What's that? No place in the enterprise. You say as Jordan and Jake, I'm sure, are typing away at Discord.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
What's Discord?
So last month we talked about the U.S. government. I forget which chunk of it came out and kind of lambasted Microsoft for their lack of security in their software, and they literally said Microsoft should tie executive pay to security. And I guess that's what they did. They actually came out, and you can read this article. Microsoft is like, oh yeah, I guess we should do that now since we've been publicly shamed by our own government. So that's,
it was basically the Department of Homeland, by the way, as a side note.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to guess which one it was. Yes. Wrapping up here in terms of like major industry news. This was kind of a thing. So VMware got bought out by Broadcom, as we all probably know at this point. And, it's like, okay, well, there's a whole bunch of home, some people were using their I was about to say Hyper-V. What's it called? Horizon, right? They were using a local hypervisor for hobby stuff and home stuff. And so they took it and they were going to kill it. And they took a bunch of crap for that. So they've kind of come back and say, okay, no, VMware Desktop Hypervisor Pro will be available for personal use. And so you can now download this on your home workstation, use this if you so want. The general feeling of this feels like Oracle with the JRE and some other orgs, which is like, yeah, free for personal use. But then your companies are going to get hey, we've noticed you've downloaded this version. You've downloaded Workstation Pro. multiple times from this IP address. We would like to come in and do a audit to make sure that you're not using it for commercial use. So just be aware of that. Like they killed it, then they unkilled it. They're giving away for free, but absolutely you might say, oh great, we can start using it. You can commercially, but you have to pay for it, which likely means we might see audits in the future. So ending up just with some brief window. Oh, did you have something
before you jump into that, I got one more news item in regards to ransomware.
Okay.
So I don't see it on your list there. There's one other healthcare organization that did get ransomware in this past week. They currently have a breach update, and so this one is actually like live in development currently. And it's fairly important. I'm going to post just a random news article for it. It's fairly important just because it's one of the largest healthcare providers across the entirety of the US. Yeah. So Ascension, basically, they currently still do not, as of this point in time, have a plan restoration period for it. There are still components of different hospitals that are being impacted by this. So something to think about as well, just in general, like if that's normally your hospital, like determine like, does it impact you? Does it not impact you currently in terms of that? And you know that you did need to go get care or something of that nature. So it might just be something just in general to be it is still developing. There's actually some just interesting commentary that they have down towards the bottom that it was first detected on May 8th. And everything at this point, this one is listed as being impacted, and there is still no full timeline for services to be restored as of yesterday.
Okay. All right. I'm going way over time, so I'm going to fly through this last little bit. Just a hot second, just a note, if you're using Windows 10 21H2, that goes EOL for enterprise and EDU customers next week. So if you got any of that around, next month. So you better get rid of that. System Center 2025 is here. Who knew? Who knew they were going to still do that? But they did. So if you're using any of those products in there, you're going to want to go ahead and read up on that. Also, a nice little thing here that the 22H1 is going out, but 22H2, they've actually pushed some updates to the servicing stack to reduce the size of the monthly cumulative update, which is nice. Yeehaw, good to see it. So now let's dip in. They did the latest release, 2403 ConfigMgr, did hit slow ring. Some of the things that I think are kind of interesting to note here is they've added a diagnostic dashboard for updating software updates, which is interesting. I've heard a lot of mixed results with this, a lot of crashing and dying on people. Search, this is really cool. There's a global search. So instead of, you used to have to go around these wonder bars. If you wanted to look for an app, you had to go to the software library and go to apps. But now you can really do this search, and you can do it from all over. You can search everything.
Yeah, but Brian, is that it? That's it.
Kind of.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great. Like, it's not a great look.
No.
I agree with you. We got ARM OSD support, so that's nice. I mean, let's be clear. ConfigMgr is kind of on life support on some levels. They've had it. It was moved to a different team, and I'm glad to see they are at least getting releases out. They've done some things. I think now is when we start really trying to make a decision of like, what is that team going to do with it? Are they going to do cool things, or is it just going to waste away? And
as a consultancy firm, we have a team of people doing this work. It is mostly Intune work, and that's not by my choice or the team's choice. It's dictated by the customers.
Yeah. Sure.
So we have very little config manager work now.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing that I've kind of noticed like over the years too, and I'd be curious, Gerry, just to kind of get your thoughts, especially just kind of with seeing things having just been at MMS, and had a chance to talk about it. I've noticed that like a lot of the EU side of things, it seems like there's a lot more Intune work and a lot more Intune focus on that than on the US side of things.
Sure,
is that something you've noticed as well?
Absolutely. Europe is way ahead of the US in terms of Intune. Yeah. I don't want to use the phrase modern management, but let's say cloud management. Way ahead, especially the countries like Scandinavia, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, light years ahead.
All right.
I'd still be curious, and just kind of like thinking about it. The only thing that I've kind of come up with at this point is like part of it I think has to do with average company size as being one of the big factors in it. I know there are some big companies that definitely are based in those regions and have started to make the switch, but I wonder like if that's one of the big impactors or like one of the other big impactors or drivers are on it. Yeah,
you're right there. Like a big company in Europe is kind of average size in the US, so that certainly is a driver. Ironically, Germany is behind.
That's
Really?
interesting.
Because of the German privacy laws, they are very cloud nervous. So adoption is not great in Germany. Yeah, which kind of is the opposite to what you'd expect.
Yeah. Just two brief notes here about this upgrade to Config Manager, and we can talk more into. Server 2012 R2 is not supported as a site server. You can, you can still support them as a client. So if you still need to manage those devices with extended service updates, you can still do that, but you cannot have any of your site running on server 2012 R2. I believe it will block the update. And the other one is the same is with the CMG. So if you have the original CMG running on the Cloud Service Classic, you have to get that to a machine scale VM scale set before you can do the update. So that will absolutely block the update here for Config Manager. So those two things, make sure that you have that sorted out. Let's talk a little bit about what's new in Intune, and then I will be done, and we'll hand it over to Gerry. We now have some on Mac. We have some platform level single sign-off, which is in public preview. That's yep. People do be
you should be excited about that. Everybody should be excited about that.
Right. They have automated auto update available with Win30. Now, this seems like a really oddly named feature. What it's saying is if you've deployed an app as available, you can now supersede that app, and you can say, well, where that old app is installed, because it's available, the user has chosen to install it, Intune will now automatically install the latest version of it. This is a thing we had in Config Manager, and now we have it in Intune. So this is a big step forward in terms of being able to manage available apps deployed as available and making sure that they are the latest and correct post-secure version. They added let's see here, if I can find this. They added a Windows Update distribution report, which is interesting. I played with it. It's nice that you can drill down. I think it does give you some interesting data. It shocks me that there's no meaningful chart or graphic for it, but they've added a report. Go check it out. See if it's useful for you. Remote help got two things. Remote help is part of the Intune suite. You can fully control a Mac OS device now. And it's also available in GCC for certain, let's see what this is, Windows and Android devices. So if you're in GCC and you've been waiting for that, there you go. And then the last thing I'll say is, of course, if you missed it, it now has Copilot. It's somewhere down here. But Copilot ran into Intune and is in public preview. So hopefully you have it showing up in your thing if you want to go play with it. I play with it a little bit. Not super impressed, but okay. It's a thing you can play with. Okay, that's it for the news. I took way too much time, but that's okay. Gerry.
Yeah, so we did a session in MMS, myself and Fabian Rodriguez.
Yeah.
On securing unmanaged workstations, and Bryan just asked me to come and kind of give some of the main takeaways from that session. It was a popular enough session, and maybe half the attendees were doing nothing.
Yeah. So what do you mean by unmanaged? First of all, because like what does that word mean when you say unmanaged?
The John Wayne of mobile devices, really.
Okay.
So allowing access to corporate resources, but taking no care to do anything.
Okay.
So so it's essentially BYOD. It's a huge market. If you trust the numbers, it's $100 billion market this year, expected to double in 5 years. So it's a massive market. So we just wanted to talk to the attendees about what you can do if you don't want to enroll your devices. What are the options? But what's it actually called these days, guys? So there's been a lot of interchangeable names over the years. So we've had mobile application management, MAM, mobile application management without enrollment, or MAM-WE. We've now got app protection, or APP, and we've app protection without enrollment, or AppWE. So I just say APP for the whole lot. They're kind of, it's all the same. So it doesn't really matter whether you're enrolling the device or not. You can still use app protection policy. So it was important. People didn't kind of understand the difference between those terms, and there really is none. They're interchangeable terms. So a couple of the things that we talked about, which surprised people, is that Microsoft actually have a blueprint. You can download a blueprint for recommended Microsoft BYOD scenarios, and they call it the good, better, best approach, right? Now, to me, you just need to get to the good. And the good is implementing app protection policies, conditional access policies based on having an app protection policy in the first place, and also on the signals from mobile threat defense. It also states that you should only use browser-based access to services on Windows and Mac. And then conditional access is enforced on approved apps for mobile devices. So that's your good. And it's essentially the kind of stuff that we would do every day. Better is, and better and best, I don't think is where people are going to go with BYOD. Better is essentially the same as good, but also additional controls with cloud app security. So you need E5. That's not gonna happen.
And what is cloud app security?
Cloud app security, yeah. So allows you to maybe perhaps control settings within the sessions to give you more granular control on how the people access the services by controlling the apps. But it's a more expensive. Well, it needs E5 essentially. So that one is a bit more difficult. And the last one, I think this is a small bit disingenuous, but the best approach is to utilize AVD. So essentially, that's the target for your BYOD devices, and they're enrolled anyway. So it's not really BYOD, but that is the best approach. That's the recommended best approach.
I mean, that's literally just Citrix. I mean, that's or I should say terminal services.
Well, are they recommending terminal services or remote app over AVD, or is it a combination of both?
They are recommending web access to AVD.
Okay.
So all access to Windows and to Mac should be done by browser only on BYOD devices. That's the recommendation. Now, whether that works in reality is a different story. Android and iOS are different because you can control conditional access on the apps, but app protection only supports Edge on Windows. So it has to be browser-based.
Okay. Right. So they're saying on mobile devices, you have more control than we have today on a Windows, Mac. And
which is true because of the application containerization layer.
Right.
Yeah, but if you're gonna... and the fact that you can have an app broker, which we'll come to in a moment when we talk about the requirements for doing this. So that's the first thing. People aren't aware of this of the blueprint. They're also not aware of the app framework. So there are so many settings. I didn't count them, but if you worked out the possible combination of all those settings, again, I didn't work it out, but it's a lot. And it's not always obvious which permutation of the policy settings are required. So Microsoft gives a recommendation in their APP framework, level 1, 2, and 3, enterprise basic, enhanced, and high data. Level 2 and 3, we don't really get into. It's really high value sensitive data. But level 1 protection is the minimum data protection configuration for an enterprise device. And it tells you what to do. It actually gives the settings there. And people aren't really familiar with that. So it's a good starting point. Another thing we talked about was conditional access. The fact that if you currently are using require approved client app as a conditional access setting, that's being deprecated. So you need to change, you need to migrate to use require app protection policy. Yeah, just that was a note. Then we talked about what you needed to implement. So first you need a managed app. What's a managed app? That's an app that's developed natively using the Intune SDK. And there are quite a few, both Microsoft and third-party apps. And Microsoft maintains a directory of those apps in the docs. You can also develop your own Android and iOS app that have the Intune SDK integrated. And for apps that haven't been developed as managed apps, you can use the Android and iOS app wrapping tools so that they can be managed with APP policy. So now, as someone who's done this, your mileage may vary on getting these to work, depending on the app. It's not that straightforward to do that. we mentioned then app protection on mobile devices is easier than on Windows because we have broker apps. So for iOS, we need to install the Microsoft Authenticator app, and for Android, we need to install the Intune company portal, even though we don't sign in, because if we sign in, we have to enroll the device, or we will enroll the device. And the reason for this is that Microsoft needed a way to allow token sharing between the apps, the managed apps in the container and the device, without relying on the underlying operating system, because that's out of their control. That could change at any time.
Right.
So therefore, they use the broker apps that they can it's under their control. They can update very quickly if it's if required. So they were the key kind of things that we discussed. And when we did a poll of hands at the end, and it was amazing. Like 30% of the room were just doing nothing. I couldn't believe that. So that was it. That was the subject matter. Now, the kind of things, obviously, we know the kind of things that you can do in the policy, things like protecting access to the container, the managed container, requiring a PIN, having complexity and length, biometrics, etc. We could, for the launch part, we could say the apps can't launch if there's not a minimum operating system version, if the device is jailbroken or rooted, and then the policies like block screen capture, there are a lot of settings that we can put in place to stop. I was going to say DLP, but just for loss of data.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to go to that session, but I'm kind of surprised you can do that. I would not have expected you could go that far on an unmanaged device.
Yeah. No, in saying that though, this is not just for unmanaged devices.
Right.
That was what that session was about, but it should also be implemented on managed devices.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I can just remember, 5-10 years ago, sitting on a team, and they're like, our Exchange administrator was literally like, "Hey, I can't get email on my phone. I'm not signing, I'm not enrolling my device in the thing that I would need, to get to allow corporate email to come in there." There was a lot of pushback, and so it's nice to see that we've come a long ways with BYOD to be like, okay, yes, we don't necessarily control this device. I don't get to wipe it because and yet we will give the access to some of the stuff you need to be like some of the things some of the resources that would actually make you more productive.
Yeah, and of course, using app protection policies without enrolling the device, we can wipe the corporate data from that device.
Right, but not the whole device. That was always
not the whole device. The corporate
that was always
data.
Their thing. They're like, oh, wait a minute. In order for me, this was their core. This was their core argument, which is like, okay, so for me to use my personal device to check my work email, which is like giving you a thing in the first place, right? Like, okay, so for me to be on the beach and check my email, I have to let you tell you that you can fire me based on what I do on this device. You could wipe my whole device. Like all of that was a big non-starter for a lot of people. And it's good to see that we've come a ways. Which is like, okay, well, we can wipe our stuff, but yours is yours.
Sorry, Jake's going to cut us short here.
Yeah, I was going to cut in. There is a question in the chat, and that is, Gary, do you have a blog post or some kind of page or something? Sorry, Jerry. Do you have any kind of blog post or anything that actually points out or talks about this in any way?
Ooh.
For unmanaged devices, but how to control them and things like that? Or do you have a recommended
the Microsoft Docs and looking up app protection policies? That's a good starting point. Intune app protection policies, APP. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So the one thing I want to say in this is, you mentioned personal email and work email and all that kind of thing. One of the really cool features about Intune app protection policies is the multi-identity, and Outlook is one of the examples of that. Outlook, pretty much all the Microsoft apps, where you can have your work account and your personal account both configured in Outlook, and the app protection policies and the ability to wipe only apply to the corporate part of the Outlook profile. So that is kind of cool.
That it's always been an interesting challenge, I think. Just in general, speaking back to the MDM versus MAM thing, right? Like I remember back when, you know, the idea of registering your device, your phone first came in, and people were like panicking because they would lose pictures of like their kids and this and that and the other thing when a device would get wiped and stuff like that. And I think one of the big things that's been interesting, and I hope we see more of it as apps become more containerized going forward, right? Is like, I want to be able to build an app or have an app that's like with this particular login or this particular profile, like you can't copy stuff out. And there's always going to be ways around it. You know, there's always going to be different components and things like that. You know, the Outlook app has gotten really good and really interesting with different components of like what you can do. Like you can actually prevent people, if you force people to use the Outlook app to access their email on a phone, you can block stuff like screenshots from the phone of being taken for that within that container. But because people use it for different accounts and stuff like that, and then being able to use this and the other thing, it's a really difficult balance to strike. So I'm really curious to see, like, as we get more containerized and stuff, like how and what opportunities there are from a MAM perspective to truly manage the applications and the content to prevent data from going outside and into a device.
Shiana's
DLP
just posted a comment there, which was a good point. We cannot manage multiple corporate accounts using this, especially government sectors. And that is true. You can only have a single corporate account, but you can have multiple personal accounts. That is a limitation.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
I'm still a great believer in enrolling all your devices. Make them do it.
Okay.
If you want access to corporate resources, enroll your device. If you don't, you don't get it. So, you know,
Seems
you want
reasonable to me.
you want the convenience. You know, screw them.
Convenience comes with holes, I think, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I think the other half of it too, right, is like there's probably some sets of data classification that goes on there, right? Like maybe there's some sets of data, like I don't really care if you want to reach this from an unmanaged device, but then there's absolutely data that I care about that, like, no, you just can't have that. Sorry about your luck. Screw you. Like, no, I'm not going to let you touch that from here.
Tell me that.
So somebody's post there about it's gone. Execs are the first. Where's it gone? Yeah, are always the first to refuse to enroll devices. Yeah. Now, to do this, if you want to hold that position, you have to get buy-in from C-suite, or it's just not going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to know that the last slide of your presentation for this was, don't do any of the things we said. Just go enroll the damn device.
No, I'm just saying this in front of this private audience. Are we posting this online, Jake?
No, not at all.
What now? Sorry, I was reading something.
We can't. No.
Well, thank you for taking the hour with us.
No bother. Thank you, guys.
Gerry.
We
appreciate it. Everyone have a great weekend if you survive tomorrow, and we'll see you in a month or so. All right.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
What do you want to?
Nope.
Only if you say my name right.
No, Gerry.
There you go.
There it'll do.
Jury.
You're stopping your head. No, that works.
Was Bryan ever ahead?
Wow.
No.